day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's Consumer Studies Revision lesson. My name is Lillian Dube, and this lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. Right, learners, today our knowledge area is revision, and we are revising the topics food and nutrition as well as the consumer. So our objectives for today's lesson, we just want to revise questions from past exam papers on food and nutrition as well as the consumer. Learners, we have covered the topic food and nutrition and part of the consumer. So we will start with our short questions, that is the multiple choice questions, right? It says various options are provided as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the answer and write only the letter A to D next to the question number. So that's one instruction that we need to follow, right? So the question 1.1 says a foodborne disease that takes its name after the bacteria that live actively in the intestine of animals is A. E. coli, B. Hepatitis A, C. Gastroenteritis, and D. Dysentery. Right, let's answer 1.1, then we can move on to our question 1.2. Right, let's move on to 1.2. Says Tato returned from the camp. He had diarrhea and told his mother that he swam in a dam. The dam water was very dirty. A. Hepatitis A, B. Food poisoning, C. Gastroenteritis, and D. Tuberculosis. So we are trying to find out what was the cause of the diarrhea. Right, answer 1.2, then we can move on. We move on to question 1.3 says the food additive that gives food an even or consistent texture. A. Antioxidants, B. Emulsifiers, C. Preservatives, and D. Stabilizers. And 1.4 says the use of antioxidants as an additive prevents A. Allergies and separation, B. Discoloration and rancidity, C. Rancidity and allergies, and D. Separation and discoloration. Right, we will answer 1.3 and 1.4. Right, let's move on. 1.5 says people who have high blood pressure may have to reduce their dash intake. That is A. Sugar, B. Tea and coffee, C. Salt, and D. Herbs. Right, we move on to question 1.6 says dash ensures the efficient use of time. A. Planning, B. Training, C. Equipment, and D. Staff. Right, let's answer 1.5 and 1.6. Right, let's move on to question 1.7 and 1.8. 1.7 says staff training is important because it A, creates customer loyalty, B, increases productivity, C, improves advertising, and D, improves costing. And then our 1.8 says dash ensures that a product meets the required standards. A, control finances, B, a tidy workplace, C, quality control, and D, stock control. That's a 1.7 and 1.8. Let's answer them and then we can move on. Right, let's move on to our question. 1.9 says, high blood pressure is known as a silent killer because it A, kills instantly, B, is dangerous, C, has no signs and symptoms, and D, increases the workload of the heart. And then 1.10 says a person with high blood pressure is also at risk of developing A, high blood glucose levels and kidney failure, B, stroke, osteoporosis and anemia, C, heart attack, stroke and kidney failure, and D, heart attack, anorexia and anemia. Right? Let's answer 1.9 and 1.10. Right, we're done with 1.9 and 1.10, and then we go to the solutions for our multiple choice questions. Let's start with number 1. Says a foodborne disease that takes its name after the bacteria that live actively in the intestines of animals is called E. coli. So our answer there is A, it's E. coli. We go on to 1.2 says Tato returned from the camp. He had diarrhea and told his mother that he swam in a dam. The dam water was very dirty. So Tato must have been suffering from gastroenteritis. Right, that's 1.2. And then we go on to 1.3 says the food additive that gives food an even or consistent texture is stabilizers. So stabilizers give food a consistent texture. And then 1.4 says the use of antioxidants as an additive prevents discoloration and rancidity. So our answer is B, discoloration and rancidity. Then we go on to question 1.5 says people who have high blood pressure may have to reduce their dash intake. They may have to reduce their salt intake. So salt aggravates high blood pressure. Then 1.6 says dash ensures the efficient use of time. What ensures the efficient use of time is A, planning. So our answer for 1.6 is planning. We move on to question 1.7 says staff training is important because it increases productivity. So our answer for 1.7 is B, increases productivity. Then we go on to 1.8 says dash ensures that a product meets the required standard. That is quality control ensures that a product meets the required standards. Right? We go on to 1.9 says high blood pressure is known as a silent killer because it has no signs and symptoms. So people with high blood pressure don't feel any signs and symptoms, right? We go on to 1.10, says a person with high blood pressure is also at risk of developing. Our answer is C, that is heart attack, stroke, and kidney failure, right? We are done with our multiple choice questions. I'm hoping everybody got everything correct, right? We move on to our next question is a table which says choose the correct answer in column B to match the foodborne diseases in column A, right? Let's take a look at the columns, that is the disease column, the foodborne disease column. We've got the organs that are affected and then the incubation period, right? Let's go through the columns and try and match. So we'll match the disease with the organs that is affected and the incubation period. Remember, learners, the incubation period is the period between the time you get infected and the time that you get sick, or the time when you start showing the signs and the symptoms. Right, let's go through 1.2. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Then we can go to our solutions. Right, we go on to the solutions. Right, we said on the first foodborne disease is gastroenteritis. That is 1.2.1, gastroenteritis. Which organs are affected? We've got C. C is the liver. Sorry, C is the stomach and the intestines. So gastroenteritis affects the stomach and the intestine. And then incubation period is 5 to 10 days. And then the second one is E. coli. The matching one is A. Again, it's found in the intestines of animals and human beings. And the incubation period is 5, so that's 2 to 7 days. And then we've got hepatitis A. What does it affect? It affects the liver, so it's B, and the incubation period is 28 days. That's B2. And then the last one is tuberculosis. We have got E. What is E? It's the lungs, and then 3 is 2 to 12 weeks, right? I hope we also got those ones correct. Let's move on to our question. 1.3 says, answer the following questions with regards to hepatitis A. 3.1 says, define the term hepatitis. And 3.2 says, explain why hepatitis A is closely linked to poor sanitation and lack of personal hygiene. And point 3 says, state the foodborne disease that is referred to as stomach flu. And point 4 says, outline the transmission possibilities of the above foodborne disease. So the above foodborne disease that we're talking about is stomach flu. So you need to get this one correct so as to answer this one correct, right? Let's answer 1.3.1 to 1.3.4, and then we can go to our solutions. Right, I'm hoping we are done with the questions. Let's go to our solutions. Right, the first one was define the term hepatitis. So hepatitis is a highly infectious liver disease that is caused by the hepatitis A virus, and it is excreted in the feces of animals and human beings. So if you suffer from hepatitis A, it means you are likely have ingested some feces, right? And then 3.2 says, explain why hepatitis A is closely linked to poor sanitation and a lack of personal hygiene. So when an uninfected or unvaccinated person eats or drinks something that was contaminated by feces of an infected person, so that's when they get contaminated. So it is important that we must always wash our hands after using the toilet. Always wash your hands before touching food or before food preparation so that we avoid foodborne diseases. Right? Also, food or drinks may become contaminated when an infected person does not wash their hands after going to the toilet. Right? So that's why it is closely linked to what? To lack of personal hygiene. Right? Let's move on to the next question. Says, state the foodborne disease that is referred to as stomach flu. So gastroenteritis is referred to as stomach flu. And then it says, outline the transmission possibilities of the above foodborne disease. How is it transmitted? So that is eating or drinking contaminated food or water, or if you share utensils or food with someone who is infected. So that's how it can be transmitted from one person to another. Right, we move on to question 1.4 says, read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. I will read the scenario to you, learners. It says, the local supermarket sells a variety of organic fruits and vegetables, milk, processed food, and organically produced meat products, as well as mass-produced products. The organic vegetables are not as well shaped as the regular products, and both the organic vegetables and the meat are much more expensive. And our question says, give 3 reasons why you still choose the organic products rather than the mass-produced products. Right, I'll allow you to read through the scenario and then we will move on with the questions. Right, let's move on. We've got question 1.4.1. We go on to 1.4.2 says, explain why genetic modification of food creates so much controversy. And 4.3 says, write down 3 ways where the genetic modification of food can be used to develop food that will offer benefits to the health of the consumer. So let's answer 1.4.1 and 1.4.3. Right, we move on to the solutions to our questions. 1.4.1 says, give 3 reasons why you would still choose the organic products rather than the mass-produced products. Right, so organic foods are not genetically modified foods, and processed organic foods are free from artificial additives. Organic food can taste better. Also, organic farming creates more jobs as more farm workers are needed on the organic farms. Also, organic farms are also more concerned about the welfare of the animals. Also, organic animals are fed a natural diet, therefore can taste better. Right. So that's why we would choose organic products rather than the mass-produced products. Right, let's move on to our next question. Says, explain why the genetic modification of food creates so much controversy. We are not so sure that genetic modification is not harmful to humans. We do not know what the long-term consequences of genetically modified foods are. And again, it is a bit unethical for genetic modification, that is, for animals that grow a little more faster than what they are supposed to. Right? So I hope we understand what genetic modification is. This is when we take the DNA of one animal and put it onto another animal. So we tamper with the genes of the animals. Right? Let's move on to our 1.4.3 says, write down 3 ways where the genetic modification of food can be used to develop food that will offer benefits to the health of the consumer. So food can be developed with an increased vitamin or protein content. Also, allergy-causing properties can be removed. Properties that can prevent chronic diseases such as cancer and heart diseases can be included in the food that we eat. And fewer chemicals can be used during the production of food, and that will also benefit the health of the consumer. Right? We move on to our 1.5 says, study the list of ingredients given on the label of a packet of biscuits. Right? So I'll read out the ingredients. We've got wheat flour, palm oil, we've got salt, we've got monosodium glutamate, that is MSG, and we've got a stabilizer, we've got an emulsifier, we've got tartrazine, we've got xanthan gum, we've got maltodextrin, we've got a beef extract, we've got flavor enhancer, we have an anti-caking agent, we've got creamer, we've got casein, we've got milk solids, and whey powder. So I want you to take a closer look at the ingredients before we go to the questions. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. Right, let's move on to the questions. So 1.5.1 says, define the term food additives. And 0.5.2 says, identify from the list the ingredients that are responsible for A, improving the natural taste of the product, B, bringing out the flavor in the product, C, improving the texture as it absorbs, swells, and thickens. And D, improving the color of the product. And our 1.5.3 says an emulsifier was used in the product to form a stable emulsion when mixed with water. Give the example of A, an emulsifier, and B, a food product where this example named in A can be found. So the example is the emulsifier that you are going to give in A. I'll give you a few minutes to answer those questions and then we can go to our solutions. Right, I'm hoping we are done. Let's move on to our solutions. The first one, we're supposed to define a food additive. So food additives are natural or chemical substances added to the food to preserve or improve their flavor, their taste, and their appearance, as well as texture, right? This happens during the processing or production processes. Also, natural additives are lecithin from soya beans. That's one natural additive. And then some colorants are also man-made, right? So we can make our own colorings or our own food colorings at home. Things like carrots and beetroots, they are red. Beetroot is red in color. You can use it as a colorant at home. Right, let's move on to the next question. It says, identify from the list the ingredients that are responsible for, that is A, improving the natural taste of the product. So from the ingredients, we saw that there is salt. It improves the taste of food. We have got monosodium glutamate, which is a flavor enhancer. So it means it will also improve the natural taste of food. And then B says bringing out the flavor in the product. So amongst the ingredients, again, we had a flavor enhancer. And then C, improving the texture as it absorbs, swells, and thickens. So we have got the stabilizers and the emulsifier. They improve the texture of food, right? And then D says improving the color of the product. So we have got one of the ingredients is tartrazine, which improves the color of food, right? Let's move on to our next question. Was 1.5.3 says an emulsifier was used in the product to form an emulsion when mixed with water. Give the example of A, an emulsifier. So an emulsifier is called lecithin. And then B says a food product where this example named in A can be used. So we are saying, where can we use lecithin, or where do we use an emulsifier? We find emulsifiers in mayonnaise, we find them in salad dressings, we find them in butter and ice cream. So an emulsifier forms an emulsion, that is, it helps to mix oil and water. Right, let's go on to our next question. Is 1.6 says, read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. A consumer participating in a radio talk show had the following concern. So I'll read the scenario out to you. He says, my washing machine broke down and I called a well-known repair company who sent a technician. He found that he had to take my washing machine to his workshop for the repairs. I approved the quote he gave me. However, when I went to pay for the repairs, the invoice was double the original quote. The company refused to return my washing machine unless I paid the full amount. My question is there a law that protects me in this case? Right, I will allow you to read through the scenario and then we can go to the questions. Right, let's move on to the questions. 1.6.1 says, answer the question asked by this consumer. So the question was, is there a law that protects me in this case? And question 1.6.2 says, what should the technician have done when he realized that fixing the washing machine was going to cost more than the quoted amount? And 1.6.3 says, explain why it is beneficial to use the radio to address concerns regarding consumer issues. Right, I'll give you a few minutes to answer 1.6.1 to 1.6.3, and then we can go to the solutions. Right, we should be done. Let's move on to the solutions. It says, answer the question asked by the consumer. The question was, is there a law that protects me in this case? So the answer is yes, there is, and it's the Consumer Protection Act. So there's two parts of the questions here. You are supposed to answer yes, and then you state out Consumer Protection Act. And then 1.6.2 says, what should the technician have done when he realized that fixing the machine was going to cost more than the quoted amount? Right? So he should have called the consumer to get the go-ahead or the approval. It was just as simple as all that, but sometimes people complicate things for us. He could have just called him and told him the amount has gone up, and then the consumer would give him the go-ahead to repair the washing machine. Right? Let's move on to our question. 1.6.3 says, explain why it is beneficial to use the radio to address concerns regarding consumer issues. Right? So many people listen to the radio. That is in areas where there is no internet, nothing, they can easily listen to the radio and issues are addressed. Also, the radio is accessible to many people. Almost all people have cell phones or phones to phone in. Also, when complaints are investigated by the radio, they usually get resolved quickly as companies fear bad publicity. Also, the radio is one of the cheapest ways to spread the message. So, messages conveyed on the radio are also reliable. So, that's why it is beneficial to use the radio to address concerns. Right? Let's move on to our next question is 1.7. It says, read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. It says, a family is building a new house and the following features are part of the plan. That is a corrugated iron roof, insulation on the ceiling, aluminum window frames, the alarm system, grey water system, there is a swimming pool, solar panels on the roof, large windows, carpeted floors, remote controlled garage doors, and a rainwater tank, right? I'll allow you a few minutes to also go through the scenario before we go to the questions. Right, let's move on to our questions. Our question 1.7.1 says, identify with reasons from the list above 2 features that will help the family save on the following. A, how will they save on their electricity? And then B, how will the family save on their water? All right, I want you to answer 1.7.1, then we can move on. Right, I hope you are done with 1.7.1. Let's move on to our answers. 1.7.1 says, identify with reasons from the list above 2 features that will help the family to save on A, electricity. So already we read that the solar panels on the roof, they will generate energy from the sun, which means less electricity from Eskom will be used. Also, the insulation on the ceilings keep the home cooler in summer and warmer in winter. That means less electricity is needed to cool or heat up the home. Also, large windows let in more natural light so that it is not necessary to switch on the lights during the day. Carpeted floors are warmer. It saves on the use of heaters in winter. So that's saving on electricity. And then we go on to the B part of the question is water. So grey water system, we heard that there is a grey water system, that is bath and washing water will be used to water the garden. That means there is less need for what? For the water from the municipality. And then there is also a rainwater tank, which means rainwater will be captured to water the garden. There is also less need for what? For municipal water to the garden. Right? And then we go on to the summary for today's lesson. We said food additives are natural or chemical substances added to the food to preserve or improve their flavor, texture, or appearance. And we said all food additives hold some measure of risk because all of them can produce a toxic effect. And we said we do not know what the long-term consequences of genetically modified foods are. And foodborne diseases can be transmitted through eating or drinking contaminated food or water, or if you share utensils, towels, or food with someone who is infected. Also, we said high blood pressure is known as a silent killer because it has no signs and symptoms. Right, grade 12s, we have come to the end of our revision lesson. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next lesson.